Okay, the next term is imagery. So imagery is a literary device that you have probably come across in um, writing many, many times, and I guarantee that you've already used it in your own writing, but it is really an important device, an important tool. It's what allows writing to come alive, to come off the page, because it's a common term for the mental pictures that writers paint with their words. Imagery is made up of all of the things that are described that we perceive with our senses, so the sensory perceptions included in writing, which means anything that you can see, a description of something you can see, a description of something you can hear, a description of something you could taste or smell or touch. That is imagery. So again, when we say sensory perceptions or something describing what we pick up with our senses, that's what we're talking about. See, hear, taste, smell, touch. So that is imagery. And some examples are if you described an orange glare coming through your car windshield, or a ginger colored cat, or a very tall and thin person, that would be sight imagery. That's describing things we can see. Something you can smell, sweaty gym clothes, or the dusty odor of the dry earth. That's smell imagery. The pink sweetness of a watermelon, that would be taste imagery. Hot July sun or damp jeans after you've come in from the rain, that would be touch imagery. And crackling underbrush as you walk through the forest, that would be sound imagery. So take a minute and fill in any blanks on your handout under the imagery definition, and we'll move on. Irony is the opposite of what is expected. So it's hard to explain something that's ironic. It's best to look at examples. It's not just a coincidence, but it is the opposite of what you would expect to happen. And there are different kinds of irony, but that's what I want you to know. The main definition of irony is the opposite of what we would expect to happen. So one example that 7th graders always love, this is a true story. This happened, I think, in the early 90s. There was a cameraman filming a certain intersection in Omaha, Nebraska, because it was known as a very, very dangerous intersection. Two teenagers had just been killed there not that long ago, and in the town it was known as this very dangerous intersection. And he has his camera set up at the intersection, just ready to film the newscaster talking about this intersection and how dangerous it is and how something should be done. He goes back to his van to get another tape, because this was, again, in the early 90s when they used actual big VHS tapes, and he got hit by a car. So that's not what we would expect. Another example that I included on your handout is that that there were these certain sea lions that were rescued years and years and years ago after an oil spill off the coast of Alaska, and many animals died. These animals were rescued, they were nursed back to health, and they were ready to be released back into the wild. And as they're released back into the wild, there were lots of news reporters there and photojournalists ready to capture this wonderful story of these certain animals who had been saved and nursed back to health, and now, yay, they're being released back into the wild. And they let them go. The animals swim away from the shore, and as all the cameras are rolling, those two animals are eaten by a killer whale. So again, that's not what we would expect to happen. That's ironic. Sometimes it's a little bit morbid, though these two stories I told you are especially, but they are the ones that stick with students the most, so that's why I included those. Lastly, metaphor. We're going to try to squeeze this in here. Metaphor is, again, a figure of speech that you should know about. It's comparing two things that are dissimilar, unlike, just saying one is another thing. So if I said, he was a cheetah sprinting down the hall, you know that the person I'm talking about is not actually a cheetah, but I'm making that comparison between the boy or the young man and the cheetah. And that's a metaphor, saying that someone is something else. You're describing a character by comparing him or her to something else that's not exactly the same. Or in Macbeth, a famous line from Shakespeare, life is a brief candle.